everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to the monthly meta. Every month we get together and we have a look at what's going on in competitive Blood Bowl. We take a look at what's legal and what's lethal. So what's available in the format, what are you likely to run into, what rules do you need to be aware of if you're going to go to a tournament or if you're going to start joining a league, and secondly, what's lethal. We're going to have a look at the tournament results from the last month and put together which teams are doing very well. So last month we did the normal show. What we're going to do this month is something ever so slightly different. So instead of going one by tournaments, because there are so many tournaments going on now, we're going to start compiling the results. So we've had a look at the NAF tournaments. We've had a look at, I think, 19 of them which took place, have posted results and have had basically 8 or more teams in there, and we've compiled some of those results to give you a good view of what's happening in the meta at the moment. Anyway, let's have a look at what's legal. So what's legal in the format? Nothing new landed in the last month, which is kind of good for the format and kind of bad for all of us Blood Bowl guys that want something fun. So in the format now, which we're looking at, which is 2020 12A, so the most recent spike is 12, and we've had only one adjustment to it. So we've got the Blood Bowl 2020 rulebook. We've got Spike 11 and Spike 12. So Spike 11 has got 3 or 4 additional star players inside it. Spike 12 has got nothing that the Blood Bowl rulebook and Spike 11 doesn't have, but it fills out some interesting fluff there for Nobility and Black Orc, the background and things like that. And I think the rules for Frankenstein are in Spike 12, but if you've got Spike 11, you've already got that anyway. The Teams of Legend PDF coming out from Games Workshop does have 6 of those teams that are missing. So Amazon, High Elf, Chaos Dwarf, Norse, Vampires and Tomb Kings. If you've got a team, if you want to build a team, that's where you get those rules from. It's a free PDF and it's in the comments below, so go check it out. There's also Acorn available in White Dwarf 458. He is the teeny tiny squirrel star player. So if you buy a tree man, you get a squirrel there. Basically, he is now a star player. It's a really interesting one. Strength 1 Frenzy Claw dude. It's quite entertaining. Some tournaments are not allowing Acorn, but if you want access to him, all you have to do is just grab hold of the White Dwarf digitally and you've got his stats, or just look anywhere on the internet. NAF tournament guidelines are definitely worth looking into as well. Now, one, just because the NAF does a good job of kind of lining up Blood Bowl tournaments to kind of make them kind of fair and kind of consistent, but most importantly, they've got the rules for 2 additional Blood Bowl teams. They've got Slann, who all basically have pogo sticks, so they're jumping around everywhere, and you've got Khorne, who basically all have frenzy, so you're just smashing face everywhere. 2 very unique ways to play Blood Bowl. I absolutely recommend playing both of them. Slann were represented by Kislev in Blood Bowl 2, and Khorne were represented by Khorne in Blood Bowl 1. So if you want to jump on and play some historic Blood Bowl, some classic Blood Bowl with those rules, you can do now. There was a FAQ that landed in May that changed a few things, so some watch-outs around how your skills work when it's not your turn, and whether Bombardiers are any good with the Hail Mary pass anymore. Spoiler alert, they're not. If you want to go back and have a proper look at the May FAQ, go download it, again, link below, or watch our video where we cover it, because we break down basically all the things you need to know about. So, that's the core. There's some optional good stuff too. And the premium optional good stuff here has to be Death Zone 2021. So Death Zone is a book that is absolutely chock-a-block with great additional Blood Bowl rules. From cool mercenary rules to giants to pitches to wizards. It's just a book of Bonehead podcast dreams. It's fantastic. It's even got the Sevens rules in there as well, which is very useful. Now, you don't have to use any of that, and a lot of tournaments won't be using most of that, and a lot of leagues won't be using most of that. But pick it up, have a read, choose a few things to include in your league. If you're running a tournament, get that book and choose 1 or 2 things to include in your tournament to make it cool, make it different, and sneak those rules in there somewhere. Personally, I recommend Giants, but that will surprise none of you. Well, the Wizards are pretty sweet as well. The Wizards are very sweet. Wizards. We should do something with Wizards. Anyway, special play cards and pitches are also available, so these kind of packs, they are great for narrative friendly play. If you're just playing a regular kind of game against somebody you play a lot of Blood Bowl with, if you're playing with your family, if you're playing with friends, you're not overly competitive, they can add a really cool element of narrative play to it, and they're great fun for that. If you're playing competitively, they're not going to be very popular because they are incredibly swingy. You'll pay the same gold for one card that will do basically nothing as you will a card that will basically kill a dude. So buyer beware. I'm not a massive fan of the special play cards, but Not in competitive Blood Bowl, but in friendly Blood Bowl, I think they're absolutely great fun. Pitches as well, they've got some special rules. That's more of a, I'm going to agree with you. We're going to use this pitch rule. Some very thematic stuff there, especially in Spike 11, which I maintain is the best spike they've ever made. There's some very cool and thematic rules in there as well. Now, this one did come out this month, which is White Dwarf 466 with the referee rules. Now, we took a bit of a deep dive into that a couple of Theory Thursdays ago, and I love these rules. Definitely not a competitive thing, but if you're a Goblin player or a Dwarf player with a Death Roller, and I don't know, it's just really narrative. Basically, the refs are on the pitch, or one ref is on the pitch. So he runs around, and the further you are away from the ref, the easier it is to foul. But you can kill the ref, and if you kill the ref, nobody's going anywhere again. So if you've got a Death Roller and you've got a referee on the pitch, nuke him. Get that referee gone, and your Death Roller will stay on for the rest of the match, which I think is really cool. I think it's a really fun element, very thematic, and it gets that Blood Bowl kind of element to it. However, very unlikely to be seeing that in a competitive league, and certainly not in a tournament, because extra rules, extra time, and can throw out the balance. I don't know. The teams who tend to foul too much or bribe too much don't normally end up being the most competitive, so probably going to be okay. Anyway, that is what's legal in the format at the moment. So that brings us to what's lethal in Blood Bowl at the moment. So first of all, it does appear that the world is starting to return to normal, thank goodness. But until we are completely clear, please just stay safe, everybody. Do what you can to respect your opponents, respect their space, and try and be as clean as possible. We want to continue having Blood Bowl tournaments. There was like 20 something in the last month. 19 of them have reported their results, which is absolutely awesome, and I can only see that going up, which is fantastic. So stay safe, because the longer and the safer we are, the longer and the more Blood Bowl we get to play. So I did say we'd have a look at what's lethal in Blood Bowl, and it has to be star players. So we're going to have a little mini diatribe here. So if you are on Blood Bowl Twitter, on Blood Bowl Facebook, if you are tangentially related to Blood Bowl, you would have probably heard some rumblings and some grumblings about how effective star players are. So we talked about it on the podcast a couple of times. We talked about it last episode, I think. And you know what? They have a massive impact. So if you are a Blood Bowl player of old, from pre-snap Blood Bowl times, from the long ago, back before the passing stat, well, actually, that's not fair. Back before the passing stat was reintroduced, star players weren't all that popular. You'd see a couple of them and it would be part of a build. But now, these star players have got cheaper and better. And that means that you are likely to see them much more frequently. Hackflem, my little buddy here, is a top tier star player. Hackflem, Morg, Griff are all everywhere and they're doing a fantastic job. Carla, Rumbelow, Deeproot, there are just some fantastic options out there for teams. And when it comes to playing in a tournament, when it comes to playing competitively, those can feel like they warp the meta ever so much. So if you are planning on playing in a tournament, or planning on playing competitively, or planning on, building your league team, consider the star players. They have their once per game special power. They're also cheaper than they used to be, and all of them tend to make quite an impressive impact on your team. I'm in two minds about this. One, I love Blood Bowl as it is, as its core. You guys know that Sevens is my favourite way to play, and the reason for that is because it is just a beautiful little nugget of Blood Bowl. Alright, it's Blood Bowl without a lot of the minutiae, and I find that absolutely fantastic. The other part of me really likes the fact that there are 29 teams in Blood Bowl. Now with these star players, that also adds to the amount of builds. So let's say these 29 teams, there's a couple of teams that have a few different ways to make an optimal team. So you've got good choices. So let's say there's about 40 regular teams to choose from. Am I going to go with this build? Am I going to go with this build? Then you add star players on there, and that probably chucks another 20 teams on, which is cool. So there's basically like 50 to 60 different builds out there, which I think is really exciting for the game. But when it comes to star players, you can either have them or you cannot have them. And that's the really interesting thing about things like tournaments. So our events so far have been low gold, basically, to limit the tier 2 and tier 1 teams to be able to take game warping star players. There are other tournaments out there that encourage it. So we just played at the Isle of Wight Bowl, Sand Bowl 3, where you had to take a star player and it could be one of your starting 11. That meant star players were out in force, which was really interesting to see. So we ran Bonehead Bowl, which had a low TV, and there were some star players and they did good things, but none of them were game changing really. And then we went to Sandbolt, where the 20 coaches there had a ton of star players, and it really we definitely got to see what some of them did, which was very good. When it comes to League, there are definitely some teams that can run these star players regularly. They're likely to be the tier 3 teams or the tier 2 teams that take a lot of inducements. I actually don't think that's the worst thing in the world. But, like I said, you can either have star players or you can't. There's no way for you to nerf and maintain what we say is the NAF consistency element of it. I mean, it's your tournament. If you don't want to be linked to the NAF, then you can do whatever you want, and all you got to do is build a format that you think people are going to enjoy. If you want to have a Blood Bowl tournament where there's no hack phlegm, go for it. The NAF rankings won't count, but if that's what you think is going to be fun, then that's fantastic. So there's a couple of different things that we've started to see happen here, and I think Chaos Cup is running one of them, which is the Highlander version, okay, which is if you take a star player and your opponent takes a star player and you are running the same star player at the same time, nobody gets that star player, which is a really interesting thing and will add that extra element of meta build. So we see a lot of hack phlegms a lot of the time right now because he just does everything you need him to do. Are we going to see less hack phlegms if I bring a hack phlegm, you bring a hack phlegm, and nobody gets a hack phlegm? Quite possibly. So there's the Highlander version, there's the version of no star players at all, or there's just run with the rulebook and actually accept the fact that there are some tier 2 and tier 3 teams and some tier 1 teams that can take star players that really give them a bit of a boost. Ultimately, and one of the best comments I think I saw talking about this kind of thing was that before Blood Bowl 2020 came out, there was a top tier bunch of teams. Alright, Wood Elves, Dark Elves, Undead, they did their stuff. Now, it may not necessarily be those teams because star players are helping other teams out. And actually, I don't think that massively changes because as we progress in this competitive meta, we're going to have those 3 variants. No stars at all the stars you like, and the Highlander version, which doesn't break any of the rules. I like the Highlander version, but at the same point, if I want to go to a tournament, play 3 or 4 games, and I want to run Griff because I've never run Griff before, I want to get him on the pitch. Let me know what you think about star players and the way they're impacting competitive meta. It's interesting, it's new, we're in a new format, we're only about a month in, and it's very cool to look at. Now talking about looking at the format, let's have a look at how the teams are ranking with the results over the last month. Actually, I got a bit excited. I just want to talk about the Isle of Wight Sand Bowl 3 before we do that, because this was the event we went to where every team had to take a star, which meant we got to see a ton of different stars and a ton of different clever builds. So Isle of Wight Sand Bowl 3 was on the 24th of July, which was last weekend on the Isle of Wight. 4 games in one day was fine. Team value 1200, okay, 1.2 million, and with the stars you had to take at least 1 star player, but the star could be part of your 11. So what that did do was keep the team value lowish, but also meant that you could fit in that star to a Dark Elf team or something like that. Skills 1 per game kept it a really limited format as well. So you got 1 skill before your first game, and then after every game you added an extra skill. Kind of think how we did 7 Super Series, but you picked your opponent. You got your opponent before you picked your skill. So me, who ended up going 2-1-1 with Snotlings, let me tell you, everybody took tackle. And that was quite a problem when I came to my last match. Anyway, let's have a look at the winners of this event. And the winner was yet again Wayne P. Gimli. So he won our tournament at Bonehead Bowl. And then I ended up playing him on the top table of this event. First time I've actually ever played Wayne. And it was not a good matchup. And he played superbly. It was just a fantastic game. I had an absolutely brilliant day. All my games were great fun. So first place was Chaos Dwarves. Now this Chaos Dwarf team leaned heavily into the Sand Bowl build. That was so cool to see. Unless you're playing Snotlings and playing against the board with them. So Morg and Hackflem and some Chaos Dwarves and some Hobgoblins, and it was very, very potent. Morg was the tough cookie, Hackflem did what he needed to do, but if you're playing Snotlings, Chaos Dwarves are your worst nightmare. So the Chaos Dwarves lined up against me, added to the Hobgoblin that got tackled at the start of our game. It just murdered me, and even though I had some very lucky rolls and I did some very shifty things, I couldn't quite win out. So Wayne ended up going, I think, 4-0 on the day and won the event. Second place was Prime Rack with Dark Elves. I played him in round 3 and we ended up being a 1-1 draw. A really interesting team. So this was a Dark Elf build, 1 Witch, 4 Blitz, one runner, I think, and Acorn, which was pretty cool. Now, I did my very best to just take Acorn out at the beginning of the game because, hey, that low armor. No, that's not right. He had 2 assassins, which was horrific for Snotlings. But that was a great and clever build there. So took Acorn to take a low-cost star player so he could max out his team build. Took those assassins, and those assassins were fantastic on the line. Anything with armor 7+, 8+ is going down to those opening stabs, and I thought that was a genius bit of build there from Prime Rack. His name was Mark, lovely guy, really good game. Stunty was Snotlings. It was not my Snotlings, it was Mr. Roberto, who was Rob, who ran the event. He went 3-1 with his Snotlings, beating me out for Stunty. I was on the top table. I was in second place going into the third round with my cheeky 2-1 result, and then I lost my 4th game. But Mr. Roberto took it there with Stunty for Snotlings. He was running Morg and I was running Hackflem. Mad Mech Milt, which is Milton, who, if you listen to the show, you would have seen him on there a couple of times. He ran a brand new built Norse team that he built in the week. Really cool team. And he took Griff. So we had Norse with Griff, and they scored the most touchdowns. I think he ended up going 3-1 in the day. And then Shazam with Goblins got the most casualties. I can't quite remember what star player he ran. But anyway, you can see here that actually the tier 1 teams did a good thing, but star players kind of keep everyone in the mix. And that Chaos Dwarf team was excellently piloted. Morg was good, but Snotlings tied him up. That's the great thing about Snotlings. Hackflem versus Hackflem in that match was absolutely massive, and it was great. And all of these games were tough. All 4 of my games were tough and close, and it was awesome to play. Anyway, with that in mind, we are going to move on and have a look at the last month's results. So as I said, this is compiled from results on the NAF website for the tournaments in the last month that had 8 or more teams basically who had actually posted the results by now. It can be a bit tricky to do that. So compiling the results in the same way that we do with Top 5 Friday. So first place gets 5 points, second place gets 4 points. And we've only done top 1 and 2 for the purposes of this scoring because some tournaments only register the top 2 teams. Some register the top 3 as a third place prize. Anyway, that's what we're doing for this month. I'll come to what we're going to be doing for next month and forwards at the end of the video because I will need a bit of help. So I'll be looking for some people to give me a hand with this. Anyway, July top teams. You will not be surprised. We've got Chaos Dwarves coming in first. Now, they posted the most first and second place wins in this season, in this last month so far. So Chaos Dwarves won. Joint second with Dwarves and Undead. So Dwarves posted some really good results. There was a couple of tournaments where it was Dwarfs 1 and Dwarf 2, which definitely helped. But you know what? I have never had a Dwarf team come to any one of my tournaments. I've never played a tournament with Dwarves. So I'm pleased to see that Dwarves still fight well. And you know what? In this meta, where there's a lot of dodge and a lot of stunty shenanigans, Dwarves and Chaos Dwarves are positioned really well for that meta. So you don't need to waste your skills taking tackle, which means you don't kind of suffer that extra rock, paper, scissors loss against a team that doesn't have a heavy investment in dodge. That's the advantage there of those teams with having those block tackle pieces. Undead, just an absolutely solid team. They've got dash, they've got bash, they are just top tier. Underworld, coming in 4th place in the last month, is of no surprise, I'm sure, to anybody. Underworld, at its core, is a fantastic team. And then they normally have Hackflem. And Hackflem does the business, okay? So you've got the Roger, you've got those Snotlings, which are so key when it comes to Underworld. In a tournament versus tournament situation, you've got those Snotlings. That one Snotling is going to distract Morg, and we saw some horrific events at Bonehead Bowl where Snotlings were just leading Bloodthirsters on merry little chases, and let me tell you, a 15k Snotling that comes on as your 12th player, well, it's distracting 140, 160 to 340k's worth of player. It is money well spent. That is TVOP advantage, and that is so important in Blood Bowl. And 5th place Humans, which I'm sure won't surprise anybody either. They are a fantastic middle range team. Okay, they bounce, they can do what you want, they can stack up and bash, they can dash really well as well, and they've got one of the best passers in the game. And to round out the top 10, number 6 is Necromantic. That's not a surprise. We had Dave Lyons go in joint well, in top 4 for the last round of Bonehead Bowl, and I think what happened with Dave. Yeah, Dave drew the last round against Undead. Now, Necro have got some brilliant builds, and Wilhelm Chaney absolutely pads that out, but you don't need it. The great thing about Necro in a competitive environment is that you end up at 1100, 1150, 1200. Difficult thing about Necromantic is starting with a 1 million build, you can't buy all of your positionals, but when you up that cash, you can. So you start getting a more filled out Necromantic team that's got bash and it's got dash, and I love that. I love seeing it. It's nice to see some tier 2 representation. And talking of tier 2 representation, joint 7th, we've got Black Orcs. So Black Orcs actually posted a couple of good results in the last month. I think cheeky first place or cheeky second place, something like that. I mean, Black Orcs have got a load of potential there, okay? They've got one of the cheapest bash fronts I think imaginable. 1 million is going to get you a troll and 6 of these dudes with still 2 rerolls, okay? So that means you've got the cash to upgrade. Slightly limited on their star player builds, but actually they've got some good options there if you need it, but quite frankly the standard lineup is pretty good. Lizards, not a surprise there, they are a great team. Limited by the cost now and the complete lack of fun star players for them. Bless them. But actually, again, very similar to Necromantic. At 1100, 1200, you get your full lineup and then they really start cooking. The difficult thing about Lizards there, and I'm pleased to see that they are tied with Black Orcs, is the lack of a combat skill can be quite difficult. So we said Dwarves and Chaos Dwarves are doing so well because they just get free rolled those skills. This team, not free rolled those skills. So if you're in a limited skill environment, it hurts the Lizards because you don't have a combat skill, whereas the Black Orcs do have Brawler, which is not a premium combat skill, but it does often turn those 2 die blocks into 3 die blocks, and that is a great combat skill. And yes, we have Nurgle in joint 7th as well. I have no idea, I've not had a chance to dive into just what they're who now, how, but props to the Nurgle team. I think posting a couple of second place results or something like that, really cool to see. And you know what? That is inspiring, but they do have Hack Phlegm as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't some Hack Phlegm shenanigans in there, giving Nurgle a chance to be in the top 10 for July. But this one is my favourite result here. Ogres coming in the top 10. Ogres, I think they ended up posting a couple of second place results, something like that. Absolutely awesome to see. Ogres are a fantastic team. They're just awesome. They are just awesome. They are underrated. They are not as sneaky or as tricksy as Underworld. They don't get swarming, but what you do get is some of the sneaky best big guys in the game. Okay, you get Ogres. Ogres with Griff does very, very well. We saw Lee Garner take, what do you call the team? The Griff Ogre-Wolds. And you know what? Ogres do have that TV to be able to spend on Morg or Griff. And dude, Griff has got enough dash to run your team pretty well. And the Ogres take care of the bash. So awesome to see this top 10. I know it's a bit rudimentary. We've got 19 tournaments worth of results here. But it's cool to see some of the teams starting to take shape. But Ogres in the top 10. Best Stunty team by far. But that isn't necessarily totally correct. So what we've got here are the July top Stunty Cup teams. So this is based on those tournaments that have registered a Stunty Cup winner. So this does not represent the teams that had the best results, the most points in a tournament. That's what we're going to start changing up and looking at next month. But for now, Halflings this month won the most Stunty Cups, Ogres in second place, and Goblins and Snotlings posting a joint third result. I don't know why I put fourth, but yeah, you know what I mean. So Halflings doing a really good job. Makes sense, they get some of the best star player access there, but honestly all of these teams get some really good stuff. Okay, Halflings, you've got the Deep Root build, you've got Morg, you can very merrily sneak him in there. Ogres have got Griff, Goblins and Snotlings. Goblins suffer a little bit on the star player front at the moment. Snotlings with Hack Phlegm, not bad at all. I managed to go 2-1-1 with those, so it's a pretty decent build. Bit of shame to see them not win a bit more when it comes to the stunty points, but next month we'll actually be able to have a look at which of the stunty teams is performing the best in its individual match results, and I think we are likely to see Snotlings go from joint third to first in that situation. But the purpose of the game is to score touchdowns, and your top TD teams, which again is taken from those tournament results that posted their results on the NAF website. We looked at the most TD awards, which teams it went to, and we compiled them same as before. Wood Elves come in number 1. I think they went 3 times the most TDs. I think that's about right, 3 or 4, potentially 4 times. So Wood Elves didn't feature in our top 10. when it comes to winning the games and winning the tournaments, or at least coming 1 and 2, but have come in the top 1 for scoring the most touchdowns out there. Humans, Skaven and Undead tied second for this with the most touchdown awards, and that makes a lot of sense. Skaven are a powerhouse, Undead are a powerhouse, and Humans are fantastic. Those 3 teams I think are really evenly matched. It's almost a little bit rock, paper, scissors there. Undead will destroy Skaven because they're so much tougher than it. Skaven will outrun the Humans, and the Humans will outrun the Undead. Really interesting little triad of teams there. Amazons coming in here with top TDs at number 5 was quite a surprise. They're not a particularly fast team, but they do create running lanes like almost nobody else. And then we've got the Bash. So we've done the Dash, now it's the Bash time. Top casualty awards, so the most casualties caused awards go to Dwarves at number 1. That's not surprising. For everything we talked about, these guys have come back to the pitch with an absolute vengeance, and with it's just the amount of dodge and stunty that we're seeing because of those star players, because of that element of it. That block and tackle is absolutely tearing everybody new things, new personal pockets, should we call them, with Khorne and Orcs coming in second, which I thought was pretty awesome as well. Does not surprise me with either of those teams. Okay, Khorne, you're throwing frenzy blocks for the rest of your life. Okay, there are many situations where you are getting the holiest of Blood Bowl block, that 6-die frenzy block, and Orcs just pound to the ground. And with the ability now for the big and blockers to be able to move 5 squares, you will get good blocks, you will get good assists, and you will get good deaths, which is pretty sweet. Amazons and Black Orcs coming in joint 4th. I mean, Amazons are a bash team. They are a sneaky bash team, but they are a bash team. And Black Orcs there just come with that amount of strength, and they get free rolled a couple of really good combat skills, or a couple of really good tier 2 combat skills. That brawler grab combo just means that a lot of your 2-die blocks become 3-die blocks, and a lot of the pushes become, you're going to this guy, and then become another block, which just means you get a load of self-chain multiple blocks, which is pretty awesome for causing casualties. Okay, so that wraps up everything we've got for July. Now, what we're going to do next month, and this is something that I've started building on this month, and I think it's going to be really cool. I would love to get your help, because what I'd like to do is take the match results from the NAF site, plug them into a spreadsheet up in building, and then we can rank the teams as if they were having one big tournament, which I think is going to be really cool. Now, I think we'll probably have to do it in 2 ways, one with an average and one with just a total, okay, but that's going to be absolutely fine. So probably going to need some help with a bit of data entry. So if you love spreadsheets and you love Blood Bowl and you love the podcast, then please drop me an email, because I'm going to be looking for a few people to help with this. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use our tournament scoring system, which is the same one as they use in Bonehead Brawl and Mana Bowl, which is 30 points for a win, 10 points for a draw, up to 3 points per touchdown per game, up to 3 points per casualty per game. Now, difficult thing is we don't always have casualties registered, so we may not be able to make the most of that, but also 1 point for 0 touchdowns allowed, which kind of keeps Nurgle and Dwarves and the teams like that have the high defense in the running for the points. And what we want to do is we want to plug in all the games that are being played at the moment that are registered on the NAF. So all the matches that are registered on the NAF. And the reason we're using the NAF is because, one, very readily available data, but two, because they do kind of keep those tournaments from being too wacky, you can kind of take it. Now, the way Blood Bowl is, you've got superstar builds that day, you've got no star builds that day, and it means that it is invariably varied. However, that's the beautiful thing about this game. All the stuff we're looking at here can be different on any given game, which is just the best thing about this entire situation. However, we can start building some super data based on how many games Skaven has won, we can have a look at what the most popular teams are, who they're playing well against, and really just deep dive in to just build the best meta understanding we can for Blood Bowl when it comes to a competitive environment, which excites the heck out of me, may bore the heck out of you, and I'm sorry if it does, but I'm sure we can find a couple of people to help me build a monster spreadsheet. Anyway guys, I'm going to disappear. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking, rolling, dodging, no tackle. No tackle. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the show even further, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Or come and join us in our Patreon, link below, where you get early access to our content and monthly competitions. See you later.